Okay, welcome back to another episode of Caffeine Fueled Ventures. I think we've got a really interesting one for you today. Actually, this is one that's probably pretty close to both mine and Jake's heart. I spend a lot of time sort of dabbling in design, as you do as a small business owner. You get your hands pretty dirty. But today, actually, I think we're going to go on a slightly different take to what I've seen on YouTube so far. So instead of focusing on spending a ton of time getting the perfect logo, the perfect colors, the perfect font pairings, etc., to talk about your brand, what we're going to do today is talk about how you can get your brand or small business up and going in a day. And what we mean by that is from a sort of branding perspective, we're talking about color palettes, logos, font pairings, but getting all of that stuff tied up to a really decent degree quickly. You might say, well, why rush it? Well, the thing is, right, you are, there's so many more important things out there, especially when you're just starting your business, than having every little bit nailed. You can, despite what people tell you, you can change your font, you can change your logo. I mean, we've changed ours for our coffee business, so Caffeinate Coffee. How many times, Jake, do you reckon we've changed our logo?
3 or 4 at this point, if not more.
All right. So yeah, we changed it a few times. Anyway, so the point really is that what we're going to do is walk you through getting that out quickly, but to a decent level. So what we're going to do today is focus on using a free tool called Canva. No affiliation at this point. We'd love to have an affiliation where maybe if you went and used it and you decided to go for the paid version, we would get some kind of benefit from it, but we don't currently. And by the way, you can use the free version completely, and that's what we do. We actually manage to get all the stuff that we need when we're using Canva using the free version. So it's absolutely, you'll be able to do all of this completely for free. So if you like our content, please feel free to subscribe and like and follow us on your favorite podcasting app. And let's just jump straight in, shall we?
Yeah, dude. So, probably one of the key things, as you say, we're going to jump into color palette. So before we do jump into color palette, I think what we probably need to understand here is that there's kind of a stage that I think you have to do, and I know we kind of discussed this, that you have to do before you go down any of the specifics like color palette, pairings, etc. And I think that first piece is understanding what the brand stands for, right? So I suppose I would classify it as brand identity. It's what the brand stands for outside of, we're just a candle business, or we're just, so really you need to kind of understand. And what that looks like is essentially taking a piece of paper or, a Word document, either way, save the trees and go down that route, no issues there. But essentially we think there's 4 questions you need to be able to answer before you can realistically make good decisions about a color palette, essentially. So who firstly is your ideal customer, right? So you're looking to try and work out what age, what interests do they have, what location, gender, possibly, if you think that might be important. Obviously, nowadays that's becoming perhaps less important for businesses, but maybe something to consider. If you're selling erectile dysfunction medication, for example, good chance you're targeting gents, right? Whatever the case might be. So, something definitely to get your head around, right? And I think location, age is a hard one, right? Because I know we've looked at age in the past and we've gone, well, everyone drinks coffee, so, well, surely everyone's our target audience. That is a hard one to get your head around. But I think location is an easy one that you can, really tangibly see, the output of that, right? So for us, we made the conscious decision that we were going to be a UK focused brand for the starting blocks, right? Because trying to do a coffee business that has changing costs, aka currency converters, potentially having language converters, having all those shipping expenses to ship to other countries. was never going to be easy. So we decided very early we were going to be a coffee business focused in the UK. And you can get more niche than that if you think that will help. Maybe you decide that you want to be a brand that focuses on Scotland, for example. You want to get more niche than that, and maybe you want to play up that Scottish vibe for the business, right? The next one is what's your personality? So this one's an intriguing one because instantly when I think you hear what's your personality, you think, well, I'm fun, I'm bubbly, I'm that kind of person. No, we're not talking about what's your personality. We're talking about what's the personality of the business you are trying to build. What personality do you want to be known for, or your brand to be seen as, right? So, do you want to be a super serious business? Do you want to be a fun business, a jokey business? Do you want to be a business that's a little sarcastic? Do you want to be a business that is associated to be, your customer's best friend? Or, do you want to be a business that's, as I say, associated with being quite serious, quite direct and to the point? Now, that's going to ultimately come down to possibly the industry you're in. If you're a lawyer and you're starting a law business, it's highly unlikely you want to be considered to be a fun, sarcastic style company, right? That doesn't really fit and build a huge amount of confidence in you from your customers. Next one, what's your story? Why are you starting the business? How long have you been into that business before you're forming the company or into that particular thing? Candles, coffee, whatever it might be. And why and what are the passions behind starting that business? So what's your story? It's the about us kind of thing, right? And then last question to kind of ask yourself is what makes you different from the competitors out there? Why you? Why your t-shirts? Why your candles? Why are your products better than others? Or more importantly, maybe your product is as good or the same as others. So what differentiates you? Why should someone shop with you? Is it your customer service? Is it your delivery speed? Is it, all of these things are kind of things to ask yourself, we think, before you kind of start. So I'm going to run through those again. Ideal customer, personality, what's your story, and what makes you different. All of those things are going to help shape your brand identity. And until you've got a brand identity, you're going to find it really hard to define a color palette or start building a logo, essentially. So once you've kind of written those down, we're not suggesting that you spend hours and hours agonizing over some of this stuff. This article or this podcast was very much about how to get this up and running in a day. So what I would say is write those questions down, take an hour and spend 15 minutes on each question. And from there, you should have a pretty damn good idea of, where you want to take this business, what the business is about. And from there, we honestly suggest getting on a site, colorpalette.co.uk. There are so many different options out there. We'll probably leave a link in the description. You can even go to Pinterest, right? Type in color palettes on Pinterest. And you'll see plenty come up. And what we suggest you do then is when you've got a long list of color palettes, scan through them, right? And just say, okay, well, what jumps out to me? Which one do I really like? Which one stands for what I want this business to be about? Don't just go for the first one you see, but at the same time, kind of go for the first one that jumps out to you. At this stage, we don't think this is a science. It's a quick test, right? You're seeing if that works. Once you've finished, if you realize, okay, well, our logo doesn't look good like that with those colors, or it doesn't really work for what this business is about, you can always come back and change them. One thing that I have to hammer home here, right, is color palettes are key in that we say go and find a color palette from the web and don't just grab random colors, because the problem is if you grab random colors and you don't know a huge about color theory, you're going to end up grabbing a ton of colors that either clash maybe, or colors that don't complement one another, and therefore that could be quite jarring in your branding, right? So the last thing we suggest you do is, you can type it into Google, it's not very hard to find. Essentially type in psychology of color theory, and what you will be presented with is a list of different bits and bobs that talk about how different colors help provide an understanding to your customers as to what your brand is about. It's why certain businesses are certain colors, right? So it's the reason Fanta, for example, is orange. Orange is associated with fun and enjoyment and that sort of thing, whereas maybe a purple is considered to be quite trustworthy and so on. So give that a Google, have a look and see if any of those kind of descriptors describe how you really want to be seen. Maybe use one of those. It gives you an idea. You're not suggesting we use that specific color, but it will suggest using maybe a purple. So find a color palette with a purple in it, right? Don't spend too long on this. You can always change it. So I've rambled on. I'm going to throw it to Rory. Take us away with the logo, dude.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I guess the other thing that I would mention as well is, as we go through this, a key theme is that actually a lot of this work is done for you. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time you start a new business or you're starting a brand. Go and have a look online. Like half of these resources are out there for free. And to be honest, unless your thing is, for example, color theory and you know everything about it, why try and come up with your own color palette? There are infinity combinations out there, and somebody will have put together some nice complementary colors that are going to kind of work for you. So yeah, certainly kind of look at what's available to you on the web. That's our top tip. Okay, so logos. First thing, again on the theme of using Canva, and I'm going to leave a link in the description to actually a really nice Canva color palette website, so you can scroll down. They've got hundreds of combinations, but as Jake says, hop on Pinterest, go Google it, whatever you need to do. But Canva's got a great resource that I'll link you to. And keeping it on Canva for logo, you're going to hop straight into Canva, right? And you're going to create a very simple logo to start with. Most people tend to think that creating a logo is really, really important. And ultimately, I honestly don't think it is. If you're Nike, it is really important because it's about brand recognition and people being able to easily tell that that thing is associated with you. But when you last purchased from a small company, did you go and look at their logo and look at whether or not you like their logo before you purchased the product? I mean, probably not. And same about services. Now, don't get me wrong. If you were hiring a brand agency, maybe you did look at their logo because that was important to what you were buying. But if you're going to a solicitor's, how often did you critique their motif and go, "Oh no, that's no good. I'm not going with them." So just the thing that I guess I'm trying to get to is that it's not really that important. Just crack on with it. So the first thing that I would say is you're going to want to make a logo that fits within a square. And the reason I say that is because actually, other logos look great, sort of long and wide, however it might be. But ultimately, if you don't want to have to create variations of your logo, you're going to want it to be square, because most of the time you're going to be putting your logo onto things like profile pictures. You're going to be putting it in different square related places on the web. And it's a lot easier if it's square to start with, rather than kind of taking an oblong one and working, okay, what parts of it can I use in the square? Do I do it a wraparound, or do I just make it really small so it fits? So that's going to be my first tip. The next thing is start to think about, okay, what is it that you want your logo to come across like? What just gels with you? What do you personally like? Because there's no right or wrong answer to this. And so ultimately, it's probably just going to go down to your taste at first. So your business name, is there an acronym that you can make from it? So actually, if you look on our YouTube channel, if you're following us on YouTube right now, our Caffeine Fueled Ventures brand, we have CFV as our logo. So what we've done is we've just taken the name and we've just created an acronym with it. So that's one of the easiest ways to create a logo. And actually, I made that logo in Canva and it took me 10 minutes, because ultimately what we decided was that you guys probably care more about the content we're going to come out with than what our logo looks like. The next one is to think about, do you want a motif? Now, a motif is essentially just a fancy way of saying, do you want an icon as your logo? So really, the icon, if you're gonna do one, you could go abstract if you want, and abstract is cool. If you think about companies like Uber or something like that, they've got an abstract name, so they might use like an abstract kind of motif. But really, to start with, maybe just sort of look to use an icon that defines your business. So if you're a golf course, or you're selling golf wear or whatever, golf accessories online, why not use a golf ball as your icon, something like that. I know it sounds super simple and it's been done a million times, but that's one way of getting in there quickly. And then the last one, and Jake's going to talk about this in a little bit, is about font pairings. So definitely stick around to hear about how you kind of choose the right font pairings. But once you've chosen those font pairings, why not just have your name written in your brand's fonts? Have it nice and clear. Use the colours that you've already chosen, and literally just have your name written. When we go to colours, one of the things that I would definitely recommend is that you use a maximum of 2 of the colours from your colour palette for your logo. Some work really well with lots of wild colours, and I think probably and I don't think it's Adobe's logo anymore, but they used to have this like splash, and it had like loads and loads of different colours and stuff in it, and it looked really great. That made sense for Adobe, and trust me, it probably was very, very difficult for them to make that look nice. Using multiple colours is very hard, so stick to 2, maybe even 1. And then my last tip I'm going to give you before handing over to Jake is to make sure you save your logo as PNG format. So that's PNG, and you'll be able to see that as an option when you're downloading it out of Canva. And what PNG does is a file format that retains background transparency. So what that means is it's not going to save it. And say you've just done your text, and it's going to be on a transparent background. If you save it in any other format, it will make your background white, which might not matter at first, but when you go and stick that on a blue background of your website, for example, you can have this white box around the outside of your logo. So that's one thing that would just dial up that kind of professional look. So save it as a PNG. Okay, I think we've kept that one kind of short and sweet. So I think a really important part is font pairing. So I guess over to you, Jake.
Yeah, cheers, dude. And the one thing I will jump on there that you kind of mentioned is the color piece, right? So within the color of the logo, as you say, don't use more than 2. But I would actually go further and say don't be afraid to have a black and white logo. That is, even if that's not part of your brand per se. If you've got a yellow and a red like McDonald's, it doesn't necessarily mean you should be afraid to have a black and white logo, because if the logo is black and white, it's going to print in most places particularly well. So just something to keep in mind there. Okay, so gotta be honest, we move on to possibly my least favorite topic, because I honestly find this quite difficult. I find color theory hard. I find font pairings even harder. I don't know. I just don't have an eye for this. If I'm really honest with myself. So, and I guess now being really honest with you all. But yeah, essentially this one's a tough one for me. I can definitely see the appeal, and that's why I do think this is important to do. But in the same vein as we kind of talked about all of these, don't spend hours on these, right? So, when it comes to font pairings, we will include a link to a website that will show you some pre-matched fonts that go well together. I'm sure you're sitting there and wondering, well, why do I need font pairings? What's that all about? So essentially, a font pairing is where you take two different fonts, and you are able to attribute one of those to, for example, be the header font, and then another one of those to be a body font. Because what you've got to realize is within building a website, within product labeling, you're going to have different you're going to have different areas where you're going to have text, and within those different areas where you have text, you're also going to have different needs, right? So if it's a header, likelihood is it needs to stand out, so that's possibly going to be quite big. Whereas if it's body, it needs to be paragraphable, is probably the way I would describe that. So it's important to differentiate the text so people can understand, what's the really important details and what's, some more added information like the body of the text, right? So, it's important to differentiate between them. And ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to pick fonts that are going to help make your labeling or your website or your product, etc., firstly attractive, and nice to look at and whatnot, but more importantly than anything, I would say easy to read, right? So it's all good if it looks super pretty and they're really fancy, but if they're not easy to read, then you're gonna not have many people reading them, and if you don't have many people reading them, you're going to struggle to convey certain messages, right? If you're talking about having a specific policy or having a specific scent within your selection of candles or whatever, you're not going to be able to, if you can't, if nobody's going to read the text, you're going to struggle to convey that message. So what I would say here is, don't be afraid to use one of those predetermined pairs that you can find on the site. We will link in the description. The other thing I will say here is, ultimately what you have to remember is, when coming up with these pairings, if you're going a little off piste, shall we say, you're not taking a pre-matched pair, we strongly suggest checking a number of the locations you're going to use these fonts and whether they are standard fonts, right? Because you can go to DA fonts or fonts 1001 and you can find tons and tons of cool fonts out there. But the problem you're going to have is if they aren't standard Google fonts or standard Microsoft fonts, etc., you're going to find that they won't appear in every place you try to use them. So they might not appear in your web editor, for example, if you're using certain parts of Shopify, or they might not appear within your mailing system if you're using MailChimp or Klaviyo, etc. So just keep that in mind. Don't go too far down the rabbit hole of coming up with a weird and wonderful font that no online system has. And then the last tip we would suggest is we typically suggest pairing a serif font with a sans serif font. So now I can hear most of you sitting there going, what on earth have you just said there, Jake? Because half the time I find myself asking that same question, right? So let me explain. So a serif font is a font that has what I would describe as little edges and little strokes to the end of the lines of the font, okay? Good examples of these are Times New Roman, Georgia, Palantina, and Garamond, okay? So maybe some Garamond and Times New Roman are the ones that you're kind of more familiar with, but I suppose, Times New Roman probably explains that quite well. You know how, like, in Times New Roman, it's very, formal style font. It's, got all those little, like, curves at the end of each part of the line on the text. That's what those serifs are, okay? Now, sans serifs are kind of completely the opposite, right? They don't have those little lines. They are maybe a little bit more rounded, a little bit more straight in their finish to each line. Good examples of those, probably most familiar to everyone, would be Arial. We've also got Helvetica and Tahoma, which I hadn't heard of, but another one that's an example of sans serif. We will put a link in the description to the article that you can use to explain serif versus sans serif a little bit more, but we recommend you have a header as a serif or a sans serif, and then your body is the other one, right? So if you're going to have a serif header, we suggest a sans serif body. It's not a hard and fast rule, so it's not the only way you can go, but it is one way that will help differentiate and help build some nice visualness to that font pairing. So yeah, I'm going to throw it back to Rory for the wrap up, but just something to think about on fonts. Don't spend too long on them.
Yeah, I can only echo that, mate. It's one of the hardest. We've both struggled with it, right? It's such a difficult thing to get right. So like Jake said, go and check out some predefined font pairings on the internet. Again, I'm going to say it again. People have already done the hard work. There are experts out there. Go and steal with pride. Your combination won't be unique, because if it looks good, somebody's got that pairing elsewhere on the web. So certainly go look at what other things are available to you online. Ultimately, to kind of wrap up here, colors, fonts, logos, they're all really important. All of them together come together to kind of tell a story about your brand, and they kind of help differentiate you. But they are not more important than getting your product, your service, whatever it is, online and selling. If I even just take us as an example, we launched, with colors and brands and everything. We spent a fair bit of time on it, to be fair, but ultimately, I think we realized probably 2 or 3 weeks in that we didn't even like what we'd actually come up with originally. But guess what? Stuff still sold. We still sold a load of coffee, and we still sold a load of stuff on, because even if I look at our first iteration of our branding for some of our, for mugs and stuff that we've done in the past, we didn't spend any time on that really, but we still sold the product in, the tens of thousands probably at this point. So ultimately, until you start to get to a quite a big kind of size, don't spend too much time on it. I think we really, and we can only go back to kind of Jake's questions there, we really spent some time, making sure that we had those questions nailed, understanding who, why, the personality of our business and what makes us different. And in doing that, we're able now to understand completely what our business stands for, and we're able to direct everything towards that, whether it be our text, the body text on our website, whether it be the colors that we're trying to convey. And over time, these things kind of come in. We said to ourselves when we hit a certain point with Caffeinate Coffee, we said, right, let's get somebody in that kind of knows what they're talking about with colors. Let's get somebody in that kind of, has a lot of experience creating logos. And, we spent some money there, and, I think we're really happy with our rebrand as it goes through. And if you're watching this now, I don't know when this episode is going to come out. I'd like to think we're probably at least half of our branding's online. We probably might even be at our new redesigned packaging by that point. So I definitely, go away and have a look at what we've done. Caffeinate Coffee, you can Google it. We should be there as number one. If not, links in the description. I think we'll probably wrap it up there, mate. If you like what we're kind of coming out with, please like and subscribe. It's really going to help us out. If I look back at some of the first videos that we've got kind of coming out, every time we bring out a video, hopefully it gets a little bit better. We're getting a bit more confident with it. So please bear with us. I think, the more kind of people that come and check us out, it's worth our while doing it, and we'll kind of continue to invest and make it better for you. While you're at it, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now. We've got 15% discount live on our coffee. Links in the description for that as well, and the details, so you can go across and get yourself a discount while you're working hard. You can sip some of our great coffee. Until next time, we'll see you around.